This option is to help you review for your post-assessment tomorrow. So as you're working through these problems, make sure you don't use a calculator so you can practice doing the calculations by hand. This is the first problem. Take a moment and try to solve it yourself. Remember to write your answer as a decimal. So when we add these numbers, and I know there's some subtraction here as well, we want to think about how our answer needs to be in the form of a decimal. So changing that fraction into a decimal is probably a good start. So 2/5 is the same as some number of tenths. And so if I multiply by 2, I get 4/10, which I can write as 0.4. And so now I can kind of rewrite the problem so that it has decimals in it. So I have 8/10 minus -3 plus 4/10. And then the other part I like to do is to change subtraction into addition. And so when we do that, I've got -8/10 plus the opposite of -3 is +3. Because remember, when we change subtraction into addition, we add the opposite. And we have plus 4/10. When we have all addition, it's kind of nice because we can use what's called the commutative property and add things in any order. So for example, I see two positive numbers. I may be a little more comfortable adding positive numbers, so I'm going to combine those first. So I get -8/10 plus 3 and 4/10. And now I see I have two numbers with two different signs, and when I'm adding numbers with unlike signs, I'm actually going to subtract them. And so I'm going to set up 3 and 4/10 minus 8/10. And when I subtract here, I get 2 and 6/10. And I have to think about my sign. And so in this case, the 3 and 4/10 has the higher absolute value. It's further from 0. And so that causes my overall answer to be positive. So this overall answer should be 2 and 6/10. The next problem is an order of operations problem. Try it out and then check back to check your answer. So the order of operations, we talk about parentheses, exponents, multiplication or division, addition or subtraction. So if I'm looking through here, I see division first. And so I'm going to start with 7 minus 5 plus 12 divided by 2 would be 6 times 3 equals. And then I see multiplication, 6 times 3. So 7 minus 5 plus 18 equals. Now again, add or subtract comes next. And so since this subtraction is first, I'm going to start there. 7 minus 5 is 2 plus 18 would give me 20. So my final answer should be 20. Now we have another problem to solve and write our answer as a decimal. See what you get and then check back on your answer. Since I'm going to write this answer as a decimal, it probably makes sense to change this fraction into a decimal. So again, remember that 2/5 is equivalent to 4/10, which is equivalent to 0.4. So I have -7 and 2/10 divided by 4/10. So I'm going to set up long division. So I have 7 and 2/10 on the inside, because that's what I'm dividing, by 4/10 on the outside. Now you probably remember we don't want to have a decimal point right here. We want to have it right next to the long division kind of bar here. So we're going to move the decimal place one spot over in each part. So now I have the new problem, 72 divided by 4. And so 4 goes into 7 one time. 4 goes into 32 8 times. And so my final answer here should be 18, except this is a negative divided by a positive. So I need to get -18. Here's another multiplication problem to try. Again, write your answer as a decimal. So we're going to change 3/4 into a decimal. You may know that as 0.75 or 75 hundredths. And we're going to multiply that by 4 and 2/10. And again, I also see this negative sign here that I don't want to forget about later. So 2 times 5 gets us to 10. 2 times 7 gets us to 14 plus 1 is 15. 4 times 5 gets us to 20. 4 times 7, 28, plus 2, 30. Add these together, 0, 5, 1, 3. And then with decimals, I have 1, 2, 3 places in the numbers I'm multiplying. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 places in my answer. So I get 3 and 15/100ths. And then again, because it's a negative being multiplied by a positive, I'm going to get a negative answer. So I should have -3 and 15/100ths. For the next problem, we're going to convert this rational number into a decimal using long division. So take a moment and see if you can make 11/16 into a decimal using long division. The most important thing to do is to set up your problem correctly. So 11 is being divided by 16. That means 11 needs to go on the inside. So this number, you're probably noticing 11/16 is less than a whole. So when I actually do the division here, I'm going to get a number that is less than a whole. So 16 goes into 11 0 times. But I'm going to now have my decimal point here. 16 goes into 110 a certain number of times. So to help me out, I'm going to make a list of my products here. So kind of like going by 16s. So 16, 32, 48, 64, 80, 96, 112, 128, and we'll go a little bit further. Let's see, let's go to 144. So at this point, 16 goes into 110. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, 7's too many, so 6 times. So 6 times as 96. I'm going to subtract and I get 14. Bring down another 0. 16 goes into 140. A total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times as 112. Oh, I made a mistake, not 112. We want to go actually a little bit further. We want to go up to 128. So it's going to go in 8 times as 128. We'll subtract and get 12. And then we have 120. And 16 is going to go into 127 times as 112. We are left with 8. And now 16 goes into 80 5 times. And at that point, this problem is then done because my decimal has ended. It's terminated. So the answer I'm looking for here is 6,875 10,000ths. Make sure your decimal point is in the right spot. The last problem we're going to look at is choosing equivalent expressions based on what you know about the distributive property. So take a moment and think about which ones show the distributive property. So when it comes to the distributive property, sometimes we've used rectangular models to think about this, what we also call them area models. But if you look, for example, at what's here, thinking about all that are equivalent, we can actually solve these out if we want. So 2 plus 5 times 6, that's in parentheses, that would give me 2 plus 30, which would give me 32. Over here I have 2 times 5 plus 6 in parentheses, so 5 plus 6 would be 11. 2 times 11 would be 22. Here I have 2 times 5 is 10, plus 2 times 6 is 12, and I get 22. And lastly, I have 2 plus 5 times 2 plus 6. Because there's no parentheses, I have to do the multiplication first. So I get 2 plus 10 plus 6, which would give me 12 plus 6, which would be 18. So looking at this, I can see that 2 give me equivalent values. That would be B and C. And so what we would like you to start connecting to is 2 times 5 plus 6 is the same as 2 times 5 plus 2 times 6. So again, this is saying I have 2 5 plus 6's, which is the same as saying I have 2 5's plus 2 6's. So you want to check and verify whether or not the expressions give you the same value so you can see if they work with a distributive property. Remember, You can also look for symbols, right? If this is a 5 plus a 6, I should see us adding these products over here as well. That's it for this review. Hopefully you're feeling prepared for tomorrow, and you can always go back and review some of your other work. But this should be a good experience for you to really show what you've learned and what you've been understanding at a deeper level as the year's gone on.